Hey now! What is up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and I just got done watching the season finale, the season 1 finale of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And I gotta be honest, I wasn't sure that I was going to review this show. Hell, I wasn't even sure I was going to watch this show, at least not right off the bat, not as soon as it came out, because my first impressions of the trailer and all of the promotional material of this, I was not looking forward to this. I was not impressed with what I saw. I thought the animation style looked super cheap and choppy, and I kind of thought, like, really? Are we half-assing a Spider-Man animated show by Disney? Like, I just couldn't believe what I was watching there. Venom. And this is Venom with the actual symbol. Back when I used to really enjoy Venom. Of course, you had some of the controversy of people thinking that the show was going to be, quote, woke. Which, don't get me started on that word being used in the way that it is currently being used now. But I will say this, the lead actor who does the voice of Peter Parker Spider-Man on this show, when he's working on this goddamn show, and he did an interview where he used the comment of, well, I was just happy to see that this show wasn't woke. I'm like, oh, motherfucker. You're not feeding into the crowd that might want to check this show out, because watching this show, it is super woke. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Even the lead actor doesn't know what the hell woke means. But let's move past that, because the actual show itself, I can't believe I'm saying this. I honestly fully expected, if I ever did watch this show, to shit on this and rant on this. But I loved this show. I had so much fun with this show. I had a blast with this show. I love the depiction of the characters that are on this show, the twists and turns with how certain character developments and dynamics and the relationships with each other. I thought this was great. This felt so much like Spider-Man while also doing a great job of doing things in such a fresh and different way. The beginning, the opening credits, of course you have a rap song, which I'm sure people won't be upset about, especially putting rap into a Spider-Man thing, but I thought it came across well. I found myself listening to the intro song. I didn't skip it for every episode, but I also liked how they incorporated a sample of the original, like the 60s Spider-Man song, the theme. They incorporated it into the rap song, so I thought that flowed very well. Peter Parker, the first episode, when you see him going to high school and this big fight breaks out, this portal opens, and here comes Doctor Strange fighting a symbiote creature thing, and it's all chaos, and you don't really know what's going on. You quickly realize that he hasn't even have the Spider-Man powers yet. He hasn't been bit yet, and we see during the battle that a spider comes through the portal, and that's what bites him. That's how Peter Parker gets his powers. And then you jump ahead to him in his very makeshift costume. And as much as I didn't care for this version of the costume, it's very cheap looking. It's just a t-shirt and a bare bones version of the mask. He even had this like backpack with a tank that had his webbing, which, again, it didn't look great, but for how much would it make sense for a teenage kid to have this version of a suit if he had to make it on his own? It makes more sense than a teenager being able to somehow create the classic Spider-Man costume on his own with no money, no equipment. They made it work, and they made it make sense. And I like the voice actor, at least how good of a job he did as Peter Parker, as Spider-Man. He felt very much like the character. It didn't feel like the writing for him felt forced, or like, we need to try to make him up to date and poppy and funny. It's like, no, he just came across as natural. He came across as just a genuine good dude. I loved the moments when you saw Spider-Man stopping more street level type crimes, which is something that I know people have been complaining about the more recent movies, how they're too big and grandiose and world-destroying plots, and it was refreshing to get a Spider-Man property that was more about street stuff. I did appreciate that even myself, and there was one moment where Spider-Man catches this woman who steals money from a small time store, and he's talking to the owner, and she's sort of pleading her case of how she's desperate and she didn't mean to, she just saw the money, freaked out, and Spider-Man even sort of defends her of saying like, hey, she's going through some rough times, let's give her a break this time, let's not call the cops. This is a Spider-Man that is for the people. This is a Spider-Man that does actually genuinely care about even the criminals that he's catching. He's sort of trying to be a good guy. Like, I loved all of that. That was some of my favorite parts of this show. Also, seeing his friendships with this character Nico, who, I'll be honest, I did not watch The Runaways, and I have not really read this character in the comic books, but I am aware of her because of that Marvel video game. That right? What was that game called? Where you get to play the Marvel characters, and it's like a weird fighting game that's in teams, not Marvel Rivals, but the one before that. Either way, she was like the centerpiece of that game, and so that's how I know her. So it was cool to see her here. She's Peter Parker's best friend, and she too clearly has her own magical stuff going on that we only tease, we don't fully develop or get into yet. I loved Peter's relationship with Norman Osborn. Talk about not expecting something like this. I liked how the way Peter meets Norman Osborn is almost echoing. In fact, it's flat out echoing the same way Peter meets Tony Stark. In fact, Norman Osborn comes to their apartment and is sitting down talking to Aunt May in the same exact way that Peter came in and it was Tony Stark, but now it's Norman Osborn. So that being their dynamic, Peter having this internship at Oscorp, and Norman Osborn quickly finding out that Peter is Spider-Man. He sees the security footage of Peter changing into the costume in the building. And that sort of blew my mind. I couldn't believe that we were already going there. And also Norman Osborn more so helping Peter, being a friend. He was a good guy for the most part. Obviously, he has his ulterior motives. Obviously, you don't fully know how much you can trust him. There's still a lot of secrets. There's still a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But I love this. We've never really seen Norman Osborn and Spider-Man Peter Parker have this type of relationship. Close, but not so much. And Coleman Domingo doing the voice of Norman Osborn's great. Norman Osborn's a black guy, which again will piss people off, but I thought the voice acting and even the way he looks, Norman Osborn in the comics and the cartoons has always had the wavy hair, so it kind of makes sense to make him black. Like, it's something I never thought about until I saw it and went like, holy shit, this works. This works on so many levels. Also, the way how Peter meets and befriends Harry Osborn, such a different way. Like, they didn't grow up together. He's not his best friend. They just sort of become friends through happenstance. So that was great. Also, this taking place during the events of Civil War. Like, in the MCU, Civil War, like, this is basically an alternate what-if type scenario of Spider-Man, because it's like a lot of the events pre-Phase 3 have happened in this animated world that was like the MCU, but now at this point, things are different, especially concerning Spider-Man. A lot of this stuff is different. Also, Dr. Octopus being involved in sort of the background, where he's developing his own weapons and equipment and high-tech type stuff that he's sort of giving to other criminals on the street that Spider-Man is dealing with. I like the reveal of Dr. Octopus. I even like his design. It felt very classic. But I like so more that it was Doc Ock and Norman Osborn having this beef from the past. They clearly have a feud that sort of runs deeper than I think we even fully understand. Seeing Spider-Man's like first sort of official costume being the white costume, that shocked me, that surprised me. And having all of those episodes of him looking this way, it was cool, but it did something that I wasn't sure could be done. After all of these years of seeing the classic red Spider-Man costume, for all the years that we're just used to the classic red Spider-Man costume, the way how they built up to him getting the classic red Spider-Man costume, it's not till like episode 8 or 9 that he gets it, and it felt like a moment. It felt like a big deal, and I was pretty giddy to see it in action. I mentioned the fact that the trailer, I thought the animation in the trailer initially looked janky and cheap and wonky. I should say that for whatever reason, watching the actual show, I didn't have a problem with the animation at all. From episode 1, either because I had low expectations, it didn't bother me, or maybe I just got used to it quickly after just a couple of minutes, or maybe it looks better than what it looked initially in that trailer. But for whatever reason, I think the show looks great, animates great, at least as far as what they're going for. They're not trying to be too stylistic like in Into the Spider-Verse, which I love. But they're not going for that. They're almost going for an in-between of like 2D and 3D and whatnot. There's a side character that I haven't talked about yet called Lonnie. He is like a high school football captain type kid, but he's not a jock, he's not a dick, he's not a bully, he's not an asshole to Peter. He's actually a pretty good dude trying to befriend Peter, especially early on. And you see how he gets roped up with the 110 gang, especially because of his little brother. Like, he just gets put in this scenario that just is awful. It's terrible. It's like, man, I feel bad for this dude because he's a good guy and he's being caught up into this mess and almost forced to become bad. But finding out that he gets the nickname of Tombstone and that's basically who he's going to become, that was crazy. What a fresh take on a character that I never really thought too much about beforehand. But they're doing a good job of trying to beef up Spider-Man's other villains that maybe don't get enough love or haven't been fleshed out as well as some of the bigger heavy hitters. Even someone like Scorpion, who I always thought looked cool, but didn't really think much more of that. But here, he's dangerous. He's a serious threat. He almost kills Spider-Man at one point. I know some people were upset over Dr. Connors being a brown woman. And I've said before that I'm not so quick to want to have established characters changed race or gender just for the sake of doing it. There's certain characters that I do kind of want them to be what they normally are. But more so characters like a Peter Parker or a Bruce Wayne or a Clark Kent, because that's just sort of, that's what you're used to. That's what you expect. A character like Dr. Connors, sure, fine, we're used to him being some white dude, but I don't think them changing the character to be a brown woman, I don't think that changed Dr. Connors as a character. I wasn't watching Dr. Connors and being like, oh, she's acting silly and goofy, or she's acting off brand, off character. It's like, no, she will be Peter's almost mentor. I'm sure in a future season, because they've already announced, I think, that they're going to be doing season 2 and 3 of this. So I'm sure we're going to get this character turning into a lizard, and I think it's just going to work. But based off of that, I think they're going to do a good job of not changing these characters' personalities to the point where, like, look at Norman Osborn. You don't sit there and watch him as a black guy and say, that doesn't feel like Norman Osborn. No. In fact, we might be getting one of the more rich and dimensional versions of Norman Osborn based off of this show and the writing alone. Daredevil showing up. How could I go this long without talking about Daredevil? That blew my mind. Hearing the original score, the theme of the Netflix Daredevil song, that also was great, but it's voiced by Charlie Cox. Holy shit, it's almost like after all those years of me begging and pleading for somebody, I was yelling into the void, bring back Charlie Cox. Primarily use Charlie Cox in everything Daredevil related. And somebody heard that, Kevin Feige heard that, and is doing it. And so that's great. I can't get enough of that. The finale, This blew my mind because in the first episode, when the portal opens up and Doctor Strange is fighting that creature, you don't really think much of it because you figure, like, oh, okay, it's multiverse stuff. And we've sort of been in that pattern of just seeing that that's a thing, and you sort of just get desensitized to it. But seeing how this show did such a great job of wrapping that up, when you get to the finale, you see that Norman Osborn is not only doing experiments trying to recreate the spider that bit Peter to recreate Spider-Man's powers, but he has this portal in order to try to maybe access outer space and just doing really weird out there stuff and almost being deceptive about it, at least until he decides to reveal it. And then Doctor Strange shows up, portal opens up, and here comes that symbiote creature, and it's all sort of like making me realize that, oh shit, this is a Terminator situation where Peter's origin is directly connected to this finale, right? Like, even though Spider-Man already exists in this current time and he's helping Doctor Strange fight this creature, they go back in time. That's how the beginning of the season happens. That's how the spider that ends up biting Peter ends up getting there to bite him. It's like, I know it probably sounds super confusing if you didn't watch it, but I was sitting there going like, my God. Some of the cliffhangers that were left as far as a piece of the symbiote being left behind, I think Norman ended up finding it. Are we going to get Black Suit Spider-Man by season 2 or 3? Aunt May going to a prison and talking to Peter Parker's fucking father? What? I enjoyed this show a lot. This show did a lot of things that just, it didn't have to be this good. We almost get to a point where you expect a certain level of what you're going to get from these Disney Plus shows or these animated shows. I mean, maybe X-Men 97 should have taught me that, like, no, they're going to fucking deliver. But I feel like this Spider-Man show did deliver. Sure, I'm always going to have a place in my heart for the 90s animated series that will always be up there. And also Spectacular Spider-Man, I have a lot of respect for. But this show, if it stays the course, if it stays this level of good writing and good characters, I think we have another great Spider-Man show. So that's awesome. Let me know in the comments below, what did you think of this season 1? What did you think of the finale? What did you think of just the whole thing? Did you like it more than you were expecting? Or maybe you still didn't like it. Tell me why that was the case. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!